को वा भगवतस्त्वस्य पुण्यश्लोकाद्यकर्मणः शुद्धिकामो न शुरुवाद यशः कलिमलापहम् को वा भगवतस्तस्य पुण्यश्लोकेद्यकर्मणः शुद्धिकामो न श्रूयात् यशः कलिमलापहम् को वा भगवतस्तस्य पुण्यश्लोकेद्यकर्मणः शुद्धिकामो न श्रूयात् यशः कलिमलापहम् को वा भगवतस्तस्य पुण्यश्लोकेद्यकर्मणः पुण्यश्लोकेद्यकर्मणः शुद्धिकामो न श्रूयात् यशः कलिमलापहम्. Word to word translation. Kaha, who, va, rather, Bhagavataha, of the Lord, tasya, his, punya, virtuous, shloka, idya, worshipable by prayers, karmanaha, deeds, shuddhikamaha, desiring deliverance from all sins, na, not, shrunuyat, does hear, yashaha, glories, kali, of the age of quarrel, malapaham, the agent for sanctification. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Who is there desiring deliverance from the vices of the age of quarrel, who is not willing to hear the virtuous glories of the Lord? Purport. The age of Kali is the most condemned age due to its quarrelsome features. Kali Yuga is so saturated with vicious habits that there is a great fight at the slightest misunderstanding. Those who are engaged in the pure devotional service of the Lord, who are without any desire for self-aggrandizement, and who are freed from the effects of fruitive actions and dry philosophical speculation, are capable of getting out of the estrangements of this complicated age. The leaders of the people are very much anxious to live in peace and friendship, but they have no information of the simplest methods of hearing the glories of the Lord. On the contrary, such leaders are opposed to the propagation of the glories of the Lord. In other words, the foolish leaders want to completely deny the existence of the Lord. In the name of secular state, such leaders are enacting various plans every year. But by the insurmountable intricacies of the material nature of the Lord, all these plans for progress are being constantly frustrated. They have no eyes to see that their attempts at peace and friendship are failing. But here is the hint to get over the hurdle. If we want actual peace, we must open the road to understanding of the Supreme Lord Krishna and glorify him for his virtuous activities as they are depicted in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the Bhagavatam. Om Agnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurudritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Itinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyat Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurabhaktaranda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Who is there desiring deliverance from the vices of the age of quarrel, who is not willing to hear the virtuous glories of the Lord? So, Prabhupada is talking about how this Kali Yuga is a very condemned age, right? And the most defining quality of the age of quarrel, of the age of Kali, is quarrels. Like everybody is so quarrelsome. Prabhupada says that there's a great fight at the slightest misunderstanding. Right? We see this in the outside world, right? We see this among nations. We see this among friends and family members. We see this in the offices. Unfortunately, we see this amongst devotees in the temples, in our temple, right? We see it in spiritual places also, which is a nature of this world. We have to get used to it and pray that we are able to reduce that. And Krishna has given us the secret of how to do that. Right? In these words, also, the Bhagavatam says that those who hear the virtuous glories of the Lord, Krishna Katha is the antidote to quarrel. But let us first try to understand where these quarrels come from in the first place. Right? There are numerous instances of slight misunderstanding leading to very big fights. Right? Historically, in the 1950s, during the so-called Cold War, there was actually a turning point in the Cold War between US and all the Western nations and Russia, the Soviet Union as it used to be called in those days. It was in 1956. There was one diplomatic conference going on, discussions going on. There was a Soviet Premier, Khrushchev, and on the Western side there were some very senior diplomats in the room. There were some discussions going on, and there were some disagreements between them. And so, as part of that, the Khrushchev, when he saw these disagreements, he made a statement in Russian, right? And there were translators continuously translating, things into English. So he used a Russian idiom. He sort of said, "I feel bad about how wrong you are." Right? Somebody is saying something so wrong, and say, "I feel bad about how wrong you are. But hey, it's your funeral." Right? You can think whatever you want, it's your funeral. Don't you say that? But this guy was translating, he translated it as, you're all wrong and we will bury you. There's a big difference between saying, you're all wrong and we'll bury you, and saying, you're so wrong, I feel sorry for you. But it's your funeral, you do whatever you want. Right? There's a huge difference in the meaning. When the translator translated like that, all the diplomats looked at each other and said, did he really say that? They got so angry, they walked out, huge escalation in the Cold War between the Western countries and the Soviet Union, to illustrate how, in the age of quarrel, slightest misunderstandings can lead to huge fights, especially nowadays, right? Nowadays with the internet, it has become very easy and quickly you can start quarrels, right? One small message in this thing you can put in WhatsApp and whatever, 256 people one time you can fight with them. Right? Earlier, if you had to send a message to 256 people, right? There's a lot of work involved. You have to go write some letters, make copies of it and post it to so many people. Or assemble all of them. It's not easy to assemble 256 people. Right? Is it easy? Very difficult. And let's say there's an assembly of 256 people, who will give you the mic? You have to be an important person to get the mic. If there's an assembly of 256 people. Oh, it's so easy. Captive audience. Right? And there have been instances of people instigating, especially in the developing nations, it's happened everywhere, where people are still getting used to this. Common man, like villagers and all that, they think whatever comes in their smartphone is like the truth. Right? This fake news and all these problems. There have been many lynchings in villages in India based on some information somebody sent, and nobody tries to verify whether it's true or not and all that. But what is the necessary ingredient for quarrel to happen? When does a person quarrel or want to fight? Any ideas? Huh? Misunderstanding. Just because there is misunderstanding, there are so many misunderstandings going on everywhere. Will you go fight with everybody about everything? A little bit more. When will you fight is a question. When will a person normally fight or quarrel? Strong desire?
Expecting something.
You're expecting something?
And it is not fulfilled, then
Yeah.
you get angry.
So when your desire is not fulfilled, to be precise, when there is a threat to the fulfillment of your desire, or when you feel threatened by something, right? There are so many misunderstandings. Unless the misunderstanding impacts you, you don't go quarrel. And there is a perception of, this is going to be bad for me. This is going to impact me. I feel threatened by it. And you quarrel. Right? See, this feeling of being threatened, these things, it's all in the perception of the person, right? The situation may be exactly the same, different people perceive it in a completely different way, right? Now, our Shastras explain, they give a very scientific way to understand how perceptions and different perceptions are created. This whole material world, right? Our perceptions are influenced by one important thing. What is our perception influenced by? Any ideas? what is our perception of the world influenced by? There's no wrong answer. Huh? By ego. Little bit more detail. Ego in what? We talk about, like, think about it, perception. The way you're looking is colored by the lens that's covering your eyes. What is this lens the Shastras talk? What is the lens that covers our eyes? Maya. Maya is a very generic word. Huh? Guna. Perfect answer. Guna, the modes of nature. Right? See, a person in Tamoguna is almost like, you take a person and you put a black cloth over his head and you leave him in the room. And then, it's like he's fearful. You can't see anything. You're in a strange place. Like everything, you feel threatened. You feel like, if you hear a slight sound, right, or you feel something coming, you'll try to defend yourself, you'll try to lash out like this, right? That is the nature. Like, you can see this Tamoguna's defending mentality very clearly in animals, right? You see a dog, let's say he's eating something. One more dog comes, or even you go, immediately, open their teeth. Right? Because they're always in fear. Ignorance causes fear. And everything is fearful. Everything is threatening. Everything looks like it's the end of the world. Right? So, Tamoguna causes us to perceive this world in a very threatening way, and that's why there is significant quarrel created by this. Like smallest, slightest things. I've heard of instances when your own brothers and sisters will quarrel over slightest matter. Right? And the parents left something in their will to this person. It may be simple or some bangle or something. I left it to this person. Finished. That one was supposed to come to me. Why did father write or mother write this? And then they'll quarrel. And then quarrel leads to more quarrel. There are people who don't even talk for 20 years, 30 years, just because of the slightest thing, right? And then you go ask them, what is it quarrel about? Generations will be quarreling, nobody knows what the meaning of quarrel is. You see this, so much happening. And people just, they're in this self-preservation mode. The mode of self-preservation is a very, very tamasic mode, an animalistic nature. Right? Our Shastras explain that animals are characterized by fear. Right? They're always fearful. So that's that. Now, another perception, the perception of Rajoguna, passion. Right? Now this is a little bit more evolved perception. Now you start saying, oh, this person is a friend, this person is an enemy. Right? Now you apply that lens. See, when in Tamoguna, everything is an enemy, right? It's like, everybody is an enemy, everybody is out to get me. Everybody is out to, make my life miserable, right? That is the thinking. But in Rajoguna, we get a little bit more refined. We start differentiating friends and enemies. Now, when our friends do something which looks threatening, which feels threatening, but you will still say, oh, this is my friend. Why will he do this? Let me go check if this is, really true or not. Right? You start giving a little bit of benefit of doubt, we call it, right? You try to investigate a little bit further, and you feel a little less threatened. Also, in the mode of passion, there is also a perception of righteousness. Is this right or not? Like, in the olden ages, there used to be these kings, right? They used to fight all these battles. Now, Prabhupada gives a very interesting thing. He said that self-aggrandizement, the person wants to be known, oh, I'm the biggest king. Everybody should, bow down to me, right? That sense of importance and all this is there. But then it is driven by, it is influenced by righteousness. Yes, I want to be the most powerful king. I'm going to go fight this war. But am I fighting the war on truthfulness? Is there a real reason for me to fight the war? Right? So a little bit of that comes in. In the modern world, we see that if it's a good evolved society, government, usually they try to be righteous and truthful, and fights happen, right? But then they try to do diplomacy as much as possible, right? They'll try to see what is right, what is wrong, and they are they're a little bit more careful in beginning a fight. The same thing when it comes to sattva guna, the mode of goodness. In goodness also there are fights, right? Any instance comes to mind? Examples of people fighting in goodness. Arjuna fighting. Arjuna, actually if you think about it, Arjuna didn't want to fight. Right? But then the Lord ordered him, said, go fight on Maya because I'm telling you to fight. That's actually beyond sattva guna. It is acting in bhakti. Right? He's not doing because he likes to do this, to do good, bad. He's only doing it because Krishna has told him to do. Right? We always keep hearing these examples of this Muni cursed these people. Right? The other day we were reading the story of the descending of the Ganges. Right? Was it Kashyapa Muni's ashram? Anybody? Or Bhrigu Muni's ashram? When Bhagirath's brothers get cursed, right? Kapila's ashram. Kapila. I keep forgetting which way this thing was. But that was Kapila and then the Supreme Lord. There are a lot of other instances of, people say, a sage gets very angry that when, something wrong is done and he curses that you become a stone or something. See, usually, why is because when the peaceful nature is threatened by external forces, then usually, that's the only time. Usually they don't fight, they don't bother, they're peaceful in themselves, they're engaged in spiritual activities and all that. But when there's peaceful environment feels threatened, then they'll curse and things like that. Right? Again, because there isn't pure goodness in this world. When the sages curse like that, they are actually coming down from the mode of goodness into passion or ignorance, usually passion. And that is why they do that. Right? And usually it results in some diminution of their powers. And there's consequences for them as well. Now, in bhakti, we should see everybody and everything in relationship to Krishna. Everybody is a part and parcel of Krishna. And why should I fight with anybody? Right? When we see in relationship with Krishna, then truly when we apply that lens, then the impetus for fighting reduces drastically. Right? Now, there is still, Prabhupada used to say, there is unity in diversity in the spiritual world. Right? Not that, there are no differences and all that. In fact, in the descriptions in the Bhagavatham of the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavana, There are fights going on over there also. But that fight, what is the purpose of the fight in Goloka Vrindavan? Huh? To serve the Lord. A little bit more. Say a little bit more. Yes, it is to serve the Lord, but in what way? How do fights help in the spiritual world?
To do a better job. Competition.
Huh?
Competition and to do a better job than others.
To do better job than others. That kind of competition.
Not like
Yeah, that's also good. But there are also quarrels that enhance the rasa, right? The quarrel helps you, to improve the enjoyment of the rasa between the devotees and this thing, right? It is said that Chandravali, one of the associates of the Lord Gopis, she always thinks that Radharani, is very quarrelsome, petulant. And that's how Radharani is depicted, right? Radharani is waiting to pick a quarrel with Krishna for slightest things. Right? You've seen that in many places. But that's Radharani's mood of highest enjoyment. And Radharani thinks Chandravali is very mild. Right? She'll just, Krishna just little bit he says, she'll listen to him. Right? And not fight. Even though Krishna has done a mistake. Right? So Radharani calls Chandravali as very mild and agreeable nature. Radharani is not like that. She will immediately, if Krishna is wrong, she will point out and she'll start a quarrel with him. And sometimes, she'll just quarrel just for the sake of quarreling. So these are all very transcendental rasas. But that is purely to enhance the relationships, the rasas between the Lord and His devotees in the spiritual world. Right? Now, how do we apply this in our day-to-day lives? Right? There are two very important things to learn from this particular verse. One is how not to start a quarrel in the first place. Right? And then, secondly, if quarrel has already started and there is a tension, how do we make the place peaceful? Right? There is a secret given here. And actually these are very practical things we should all apply in our day-to-day lives. So let us look at these two aspects from this sloka's perspective. The first aspect is, how do we prevent quarrels from happening in the first place? So usually, and a quarrel is started, devotees are very clever. They will say, I'm not fighting for myself, I'm fighting for Srila Prabhupada's movement. Oh, Krishna is this thing. If I don't stop this, we'll all go to hell, this will happen, that will happen, big things we will talk. Right? I'm doing this, following Prabhupada's instructions. Prabhupada said this in this place. We try to take that reference. But we should introspect in ourselves if there is an element of self-aggrandizement associated with it. See, we are not going to go fight for every single thing that is wrong in Prabhupada's movement or in our community or anything. Only some things that impact you are ready to do this thing. Right? So, the secret given here is that we should be un-offendable. Right? Un-offendable. Meaning for ourselves, whatever anybody does or anything does, we should never get offended. If you don't get offended, it's all in you, then even if the other person is offending you, if you're not getting offended, how long will they try? One time, this thing, then they'll give up. And then actually, if it is a genuine devotee, they'll immediately realize their mistake and they'll correct themselves. So it's very important for ourselves that we should actually become unoffendable. Whatever is done, you should not feel offended. Right? Now, there is one element of this. Some people are given a responsibility to protect others from being offended. And even those people even though you're an authority, you should personally not get offended. If it's impacting you, you should not even act. It's okay. Forgive. The only time even a person in authority should act is when he sees that somebody else is being offended. And that person, obviously now you have a responsibility as an authority to preserve the community's atmosphere. So you act to preserve that because somebody else is being offended, not that you're being offended. If all of us apply this, you'll see that this whole, we'll all become very, very peaceful community, and we'll become very ideal people for society. See, once somebody asked Srila Prabhupada, this family is there, they seem to be interested. What is the best way to preach to them? Prabhupada said, just get that family to come and stay with you for 2-3 days. Okay? And you act in a very high exemplary manner. Just by looking at you, that's the best preaching you can do. Right? By our own actions. When people come to our temple, they should see, look at all these devotees. They're so nice, they're so peaceful, they're so cooperative with each other. If people come here and they see us quarreling amongst each other, what will they think? Same place, same problem outside, same problem here also. Right? So it is important for us to be unoffendable. Another aspect of this is the highest, when you are wronged, the most Krishna conscious thing to do is what? To forgive and also not to defend ourselves. You see this amongst all the Vaishnavas. Jagai and Madai story. When Nityananda Prabhu was hit on the head with a pot and he was bleeding, what did he do? He didn't try to defend himself. He just said, no, don't worry, they don't know what they're doing. Even when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, saw this blood and he wanted to leave the Vishnu Chakra and kill these people, he stopped them. Right? The right attitude we should have is we should not defend ourselves under any circumstances. And that is the best defense you can actually put. Because why? Krishna will defend you. We should have that faith. We should have most of the reasons why we feel threatened and we want to fight and this thing is we are trying to defend ourselves. People will say also, till that person impacted me, I didn't do anything. I was just keeping quiet. But because they did this to me, then that's why I react. We should not try to defend ourselves. You think Krishna is blind? Krishna doesn't see? Who is a better person to defend you? You or Krishna? Krishna can defend you in billions of ways better than you can defend yourself. So when it comes to yourself, if all of us become unoffendable and do not defend ourselves, you will see that all sources of problems will disappear automatically. Right? Very simple formula in the Shastras. Now, the other aspect we talked about is not everybody can follow in this highest level. Right? We all know our limitations. So, as long as there's community, this is a spiritual hospital. In a spiritual hospital, there are people in different levels of diseases. And we hear all this. Some of us are able to apply to some extent, some are able to apply to a greater extent, some to a lesser extent. So there will invariably be quarrels and fights. And this is Kali Yuga. That will happen. So the next thing is when the quarrels do happen, what is the secret? What is the antidote in the age of quarrel? Right? And here in this sloka itself is given, in many other places it's given. antidote to the age of quarrel is, what is it? What is the antidote? Huh? Here's the glories of the Lord, Krishna Katha. It's actually is a wonderful thing, Sometimes we hear all this, we take it, we don't understand it. You can apply it and you will see in your own lives how it can be very powerful. Right? If there is a situation of quarrel, situation of tension, and all that, when we just, without any sense of self-aggrandizement, that's important. Huh? If you are thinking of the qualities, just thinking of the Lord, reading about the pastimes of the Lord, singing His kirtans, right? Sing bhajans, kirtans, but without any sense of self-aggrandizement, you'll see that the whole place becomes peaceful, right? So, even when there are tense situations, we should learn the art of how do we bring Krishna Katha into that situation. Right? After I read this, I was thinking, next time, when we have a situation where there is a conflict between devotees and, we are having a meeting regarding that, we should start the meeting with a little bit of kirtana, we should just, some pastime of the Lord we should talk about. And something that is related to that particular situation is also very helpful. We can talk about, some pastime from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life or devotee's life, or Krishna Katha, or something about the Lord's pastimes, we can bring in. And if all of us just sit down and just hear the names of the Lord, the pastimes of the Lord, it automatically creates a sense of peacefulness and happiness. It seems very simple, but it's a very effective medicine. Right? Srila Prabhupada used to say, they want to create these United Nations, right? Now, United Nations was started when? 1949, I think, right? 49. And, they started with small number of countries, right? United Nations has been going on for 60, 70 years now. And the only thing that has happened is number of countries have increased. Number of flags in front of United Nations has increased. Prabhupada used to say this, right? We're saying United Nations, but nations are getting divided, right? And Prabhupada used to say, you want Rama Rajya, but you don't want Rama. You want peace, but you don't want Krishna, the Krishna Katha. How can there be peace in this world? So similar thing over here, we should understand that the important thing is that our perception of situations is what makes us react, quarrel, because we feel threatened. And our perception is colored by the modes of material nature we are in. Right? Tamoguna, Rajoguna, and Sattva-guna. The more tamasic you are. See, these are very easy ways to find out. You easily get starting quarrels, you're always fighting, small things, this is happening, anger is there. You can be assured you're in Tamoguna. That is what is causing these things. And knowing that helps you to be properly understand perceptions. And then we also said that how do we apply this in our lives is first is to stop quarrels from happening. We should be un-offendable and we should not defend ourselves. Let Krishna defend us. And then finally, when quarrels do happen, we should, Krishna Katha is the antidote for all quarrels. Okay? So very interesting sloka, very nice lessons to learn from this. Before we stop, anybody has any quick questions or comments?
So what about in usual life, here is but in usual life, even at work, something happens, somebody throws something at you. Don't we have to defend or we should?
Good question. What should we do in the outside world? Even in the outside world, to be honest with you, always, if you have the more clearer lens, right? In fact, that's how it's described that as you get to Sattva Guna, your lens becomes colorless, that's all. There's no color. And so you're seeing as it is. So if you have the benefit of having a colorless lens, apply that benefit and be unoffendable. Even in those material situations, Krishna will defend. And it's actually good even in those environments. Outside, other people are looking, right? Everybody observes. We think that, we two are fighting, nobody knows. The whole world knows. The moment you fight, the whole world knows. Even in those troublesome situations, when you act in a higher level, people appreciate that. And the person who's done also will understand and appreciate. There are some who will never, because they're very tamasic. But you continue to act in a higher platform, and you'll see that, you're the one who's benefited. Typically that is the case. And then there are always, everywhere, even in the outside world, there are, your boss is there, managers are there, there are manager as a manager. Somebody will observe and act if somebody continues to, offend, and be fighting out. The piece that is, the difficulty is, how do you invoke Krishna Katha in the middle of the office? Unfortunate, very unfortunate. But I think people do understand. You can always bring it as a story. I have a story from our, this thing that is helpful here. People always appreciate, especially I've seen in this country, they very much appreciate whatever is your belief system. It doesn't matter what it is. As long as you say that everybody can have their own belief system, people do appreciate it.
In the same situation, like, say you have subordinates, you see them getting the same situation, so you can defend for them.
You should defend for that, because that's your duty. When somebody is, that's why I said for yourself you should not defend, but when a person in this thing sees, you have to act, you have to defend. You have to. If you don't, you're not doing your duty. Yes, please.
Nobody was always in the right, so I guess came out. When Maharaj offended the stage, actually the stage didn't get angry, because the son got angry.
Mm-hmm.
So like Krishna is being as a Paramatma. He said, that you can see here that sage was still scolding the son. That he
Correct.
was very exalted devotee.
Why would you do that? Why would you
He
curse him?
should not have done that.
Yeah.
So that speaks about actually the sage. But still Krishna as a Paramatma acted through the form. So that is how whatever person done, people get paid off each other the way it is. So Krishna will act through the Paramatma.
Yeah. In that situation of Parishad Maharaj offending the sage and the sage's son cursing him, it was a pastime of the Lord, right? And that was the beginning of the age of quarrel. And Krishna wanted to show what is coming. But you can be very assured that when it's happening in our lives, it's not really Krishna's plan. Very rarely, very, very, very rarely. It's mainly our own self-aggrandizement and our lenses, colored lenses that are impacting and causing these quarrels and situations like this. Okay. We'll stop here. Srimad Bhagavatham ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Bol Premanande.